Hey everybody, we are currently witnessing the great liquidation hunt. Markets are a little bit rattled. We'll get into why that is in a minute. And Bitcoin has fallen literally in just one day from 106,000, I think, and changed to 100,700. It's lost over $5,000 in a matter of hours. But that's how this game works. We'll talk about some of the good news behind it as well. So again, don't be shaken out. Don't be rattled. It's just the nature of the business that we are in. The crypto market cap is $3.64 trillion. It's still high. Bitcoin, as I mentioned, is just above 101,500. And it'll probably bounce from here because there is so much stacking happening and there's not a lot of selling happening by long-term holders. And even if there was, it's been gobbled up by the ETFs and other players. We'll dig into all that today. And the real story today as well is how can Bitcoin reach $1 million by the year 2027? Is that even possible? Or is it just nuts or an extreme hopium hit? Well, let's dig into all that. And fear and greed is 81. And let's go. It's weird. It always cracks me up how much of an impact the Fed actually has on markets, because this is triggered by the Fed. And when the Fed take an action, like start talking a bit hawkish, like we're going to cut rates less in 2025, market freaks out. And then the market makers jump on and take this opportunity to exacerbate the fear. And that's where we are right now. This is a disclaimer, not financial advice. Thank you all for coming, and shout out to Patreon as well that help make this show every day. I wish I had discovered your channel earlier, but it's better late than never. Thank you, Mahmoud. I'll have to wait for your next recommendations. I will go to the moon. I joined Patreon a few months ago. Yeah, this is the key thing about this stage of the market. You know, normally the opportunities are fewer and further between after the markets have gone up 5x, 10x, 15x all across the board. So beware, everybody. This is the time where you start getting more conservative. You start stacking some cash. You start hedging maybe a little bit, maybe taking some profits. We'll dig more into that another day as well. Let me check on the markets. Yeah, we're hanging in there. Okay, so thank you, Mahmoud, as well. Let's get into Bitcoin news. First of all, this is a Bitcoin exclusive video. Let's get into why the markets are tanking. The Fed basically has said, yeah, they cut rates by 25 basis points. Normally, after that happens, the markets react in a positive way. But the Fed was hawkish. They said there will be fewer rate cuts in 2025. They said in code, if you read between the lines, the labor market is bad, which it is really bad. And real estate is the weakest sector out there for sure. All indexes are down. Everything is tanking across the board. But again, just because of words out of one man's mouth, nothing changes in the market at all. But the market has a huge overreaction. When you've been seeing this stuff for like 35 years, you learn to be very calm, like the guy in the GIF that's on a roller coaster with hands in the air smiling. Anyway, that's how you should all be. Now, this is an interesting study that got my attention this morning. This is a study from a couple of really, really good people in the space, but they believe Bitcoin could hit $1 million by 2027 using new adoption pricing model. Again, I'm a very big believer in things like Metcalfe's law, adoption, usage, etc. But they spoke about how a whole bunch of different metrics taken into one paper, one study written by these two gentlemen as well. Dr. Murray, A. Rudd, and of course, Dennis Porter from the Satoshi Action Education Committee, both in Portland, Oregon. They're forecasting Bitcoin price trajectories using a supply and demand framework. And literally at the end of the day, everything comes down to supply and demand and adoption and money flow. All right. That's very important. So there's a couple of things I found very interesting in this paper. As I speak right now, Bitcoin is bottoming out. That's $1,000 over the bottom it had a few minutes ago. But there's a couple of things that I thought were very profound in the paper. And first, they had a thing called the lost coins, which I've been talking about for years. They do not know the exact number of lost or permanently hodled Bitcoin, i.e. Satoshi wallet, but they did plug in some numbers, and they had Satoshi wallet of 1 million, his stash, 1 million Bitcoin, and the number of lost coins is 4 million. So per me, I have the Satoshi stash is somewhere between 1.04 million and 1.1 million. And yes, at least 4 million coins lost, and more Bitcoin are lost every day. That's why I say there'll never be more than 15 million Bitcoin. So when people start saying 21 million, it's nonsense. Never be more than 15 million, okay? A lot are lost forever, and a lot of boating accidents and such. The other cool, interesting thing about this paper was they had a demand multiplier, which I've been talking about the IA multiplier for years too. But they had a couple of interesting things. Basically, if the base price at 1x demand multiplier, and no withdrawals, they expect the price to go to 62,160. But as the demand multiplier increases, the price of Bitcoin rises significantly. For example, the 40x multiplier would take the price to $2.56 million. And if the withdrawal reduces the liquid supply, that can go up a lot higher as well. So I've decided I'm going to take some of the elements of that paper and compare them to my methodologies and see where we get to see exactly is $1 million by 2027 possible. So first of all, before we go in, I'm going to look at just one buyer of Bitcoin, and that is the 9 US ETFs and how much they've been stacking on average per day since January 11th, 2024. And the numbers are quite staggering. You can see IBIT here. They've been pulling in about 2,289 Bitcoin for 226 straight days on average. Fidelity, 877 Bitcoin. Remember, there's only 450 a day. Fidelity are sucking in double the miner production, and the miners aren't selling now as well. That is, if you add all these together, it's 3,800 Bitcoin per day gobbled up. You multiply that by 3 years out to the year 2027, assuming 2025, 2026, 2027, that is 750 trading days. Now, my point here is if the ETFs continue to gobble at this rate, that will suck in 2.9 million Bitcoin. The question is, are there 2.9 million Bitcoin available for sale? I don't know. There's only 15 there. Can somebody shake 3 million of that 15 million loose? Yes, probably at the right price. We'll have to see. So I decided to take this knowledge with my old multipliers and see what would shake out if only the 9 ETFs are buying and nobody else. So using this and my multiplier of 21, which is the base, assuming this amount is spent, not necessarily the 3 million Bitcoin bought, because as the demand gets tighter, the price will go up. That's clear. But the money flow, I'm assuming it is constant at this rate currently from just the 9 ETFs, and there were no other buyers. That would mean the spend over 3 years times 21, the impact to market cap would add about 6.224 trillion to the market cap, and you divide that by the number of Bitcoin, that would add 414,000 to the current price. That would take us to $517,960. And that's a big ROI, 417% from today's price in 3 years. Again, assuming only one buyer and the current rate of long-term holders selling. If we change the multiplier, we double the 21 to 42, which is my other benchmark, that takes the price to $932,920, which is nearly $1 million. So theoretically, if only the 9 ETFs continue to purchase Bitcoin at this rate, we could theoretically hit that $1 million in 3 years. What happens if we increase the multiplier? The thing gets harder. As more is bought, less supply becomes available, and the demand far outstrips the supply, and the price goes crazy pretty fast. If we go to 112, which pre-halving I estimated to be 56, 2 times 56 multiplier is 112, that would take the price of Bitcoin to 2.3 million. I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but theoretically, if the money flow continues at the rate that the current ETFs are buying, sustained for the next 3 years, and they're the only buyer, and the long-term holders continue selling at this rate, and the multiplier is 112, that's the price. We should see where all this goes. Either way, it'll be fun to watch, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they also referenced this number, 3.8 million, from Cathie Wood's target. And Cathie Wood had a price prediction of 1.5 million for Bitcoin by the year 2030. But she said, if institutions allocate 5% to Bitcoin, that adds an additional 2.3 million on top of the 1.5, which takes the price to $3.8 million. Crazy. 3.8 million is not far from this number here, 2.316 million. Again, just on those ETFs. We'll see what happens. Bitcoin heading lower, 100,700 as we speak, 100,600. Yeah, they're hunting the liquidity. They should nearly be done right now from the liquidity map I see. Anyway, that's the paper. Who knows what's going to happen? Bitcoin is scarce. It's hard. We've never seen an economic experiment like this with such a stock to flow. Again, stock to flow is 112 years, and it's only going to get longer and longer as with the more time goes on. So craziness indeed. And shout out to Didi as well. Another cool piece of Bitcoin news. Bitcoin or broke. Dutch man sells house in hope of cryptocurrency boom. This is Didi. He's famous. He's nomadic, runs around the world with his family. And they sold their $300,000 house in 2017 for 100 Bitcoin. Now, what's interesting is they can buy back that same house today with just 4 Bitcoin and save the other 96 Bitcoin. Because that house today is now worth 400,000. It's gone up 100,000, but it's gone from 100 Bitcoin to just 4 Bitcoin in price, which is fascinating to think about. Imagine if you had held the $300,000 in a bank account from 2017, they'd have far less purchasing power today. Again, that's the difference of Bitcoin just since 2017, which again is fascinating. Now, I have spoken a bit about just the 9 ETF stacking, but there are more firms stacking. We'll get to some of the on-chain stuff in a minute, but rumors are coming out now, fit, fast, and furious from Vivek. Rumors that UAE, which is Dubai, United Arab Emirates, now hold $40 billion worth of Bitcoin. Nation-state FOMO has begun. And remember, there's a lot of chatter and talk about other nation-states coming into the game, like the United States, like Poland, like Russia, and on and on and on top of some of the existing players like El Salvador. So let's get into some charts. This is, first of all, the Bitcoin black hole. We're going to look at the ETFs and how much they are sucking in because it is startling and it's accelerating all the time. First of all, this fellow, BlackRock, Larry Fink, bought $750 million in Bitcoin yesterday on a down day. $751 million to be precise. On a day when Bitcoin price is falling. Like now. Okay. It was 106,000 a few hours ago. Now it's 100,600. So it's lost nearly 6,000 in a few hours, but that's just the nature of this beast. I know people get stressed, but let's look at some more numbers. The ETFs have pulled in over $6 billion in just 12 days. And the majority of that is the number 2 line on the chart there. And that is IBIT, BlackRock. They are the ones doing all the snacking. Absolutely insane. BlackRock is also red here on the chart. I talk about the big third phase of accumulation. That's happening right now as we speak. And that phase 3 is far larger than phase 1 at the very beginning and far larger than the tiny little accumulation period in the summer. They are stacking more and more as the price goes up. Well, I shouldn't say that now because the price is low $100,000, but still it's up an awful lot from where we started. Craziness. Now, over 60,000 Bitcoin have been purchased so far in December. Again, in just 12 days, 60,000. And there's other people buying too, and they're buying really hard. We'll get into some of those in a minute. Let's look at some charts. Bitcoin chart time. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't have many bad charts. I got one, which is kind of like a bad chart, but it's not really a bad chart, but I had to stick something in there. So here we go. This is from Glassnode. This looks at the 2 to 5 year holders, and they're holding static. The 2 to 5 year holders of Bitcoin have an average price between 20,000 and 50,000, and they have not been selling. The people who have been selling are the people that got into the game in less than 2 years. They are the ones taking profits. They're the short-term speculators and traders, and they are kind of in and out. Now, even though we got above that psychologically important $100,000 level, which we're still above right now as I speak, this is supported by a huge, consistent inflow of capital. So despite the fact that the long-term holders started selling at 90,000, profit-taking, it didn't matter. Bitcoin still shot up to 108,000 because the buyers of the ETFs far exceed the actual long-term holder sellers. Again, it's not a retail game anymore. I want people to understand that. And the people that are in long-term, like you go 2 years plus back all the way to 14 years, they're hauling. They know where this is going. It's the tourists that drop in and say, you know what, I'm going to get a little taste of this Bitcoin, grab a little piece and say, oh, I made 30%, I'm out. I made 50%, I'm out. Boom. That's just the nature of the speculators, which are very important for a market anyway. So that's the good news. And this supports the thesis of how Bitcoin could really get to $1 million. I don't know if it's going to be 2027 or 2030 or 2032, but it's most probably going there, somewhere along those lines. Let's get into the good charts, even though that wasn't a bad chart. There's a lot more. First of all, the demand is nuts. I shared this briefly yesterday, but it's a beautiful chart from Crypto Quant and shows you the perspective of how fast the Bitcoin Blackrock ETF has grown compared to the Blackrock Gold ETF. Absolutely stunning. The Blackrock Gold ETF is 33.2 million, and it took 21 years to get there. The Bitcoin ETF took 226 days to get to $58 billion. Again, startling. Absolutely bonkers, as they say. Now, 2 weeks ago, this is a chart I shared 2 weeks ago exactly on this video, exactly 2 weeks to the day. There was 1.07 million Bitcoin in Bitcoin ETFs. Just the 9 of them. $103 billion in on-chain holdings. Well, fast forward to today, 2 weeks later, boom, there's 1.114 million Bitcoin in these ETFs, and the on-chain holdings are $120 billion. That's gone up nearly 20% in 2 weeks. And that gives you another perspective of how fast these things are stacking, which is stunning. There'll be a Bitcoin only playlist up here afterwards. If you only like Bitcoin only content, subscribe to that one. And what happened? This should not be here. There's more charts, a lot more charts. First of all, social sentiment. Bitcoin is also topping the social buzz sentiment. This is the amount of mentions on social media every single day as of yesterday. And the total amount of mentions for Bitcoin is 283,349 mentions, which is normally a pretty good indicator, because sometimes where there are mentions, it's potentially where the money is flowing, but not always. And these are the top 15 by social volume yesterday. And why it matters? Again, many believe it drives money flow, drives interest, it drives retail and community sentiment. What's interesting is I believe Bitcoin is an institutional game now. It's an ETF game, it's a treasury game, it's a pension game. It may not be as much as a retail game, but it's still heavily mentioned. And Bitcoin is number 1 on social sentiment. Solana's number 2. And Ethereum number 3, and craziness, XRP is number 4. And yeah, a lot of money's been flowing into XRP. But that's a measure of the sophistication of the investors out there. Now, back to who else is stacking. Michael Saylor has been on the TV quite a lot lately. And this was a screenshot of one of the channels he was on, CNBS or Fox or something. I can't remember, Bloomberg, I'm not sure. I just grabbed it. And it looked at the amount that they have purchased since the 11th of November, which is insane. This is right after they said they'll do the 21 plus 21, 42 billion in total of combination of ATM and convertibles. But 27,000 purchased November 11th, 52,000 November 18th, November 25th, 55,500. By the way, as I'm saying this, Bitcoin just shot up $600. We're back over $101,400. Woohoo! I feel like one of those auction people. December 2nd, 15.4. December 9th, 21.6. December 16th, 15.4 again. Every single week he is buying. And I could tell this week as well, he's been ATMing again to raise more cash to buy more Bitcoin. He's going to buy as much as he can through the end of the year. And then next year, he actually indicated on the same interview that he'll be flipping from ATMing over to, guess what? Convertible bonds to raise money that way instead of ATMing. So there'll be less dilution, more convertible bonds that doesn't actually impact dilution till 3, 4, 5 years in the future. So that's all good news too. But it's not just MicroStrategy. It's not just the ETFs. There's other players too. It's not just the United Arab Emirates, potentially, allegedly. In 24 hours, just yesterday, MicroStrategy, Metaplanet, Riot, and Semler Scientific all purchased 16,352 Bitcoin, all cementing Bitcoin as their premier corporate treasury asset. These are the early worms that are catching, the early birds that are catching the worm, which is Bitcoin. And the rest are following. Every day there's a new treasury. Every single day. And these treasuries aren't just in Canada. They're not just in the US, not just in the UK. They're also in Japan. They're in China. They're all over the place. It's mad to see. It's very exciting. And guess what? Taking on the Sailor playbook, the treasury strategy, guess what became the number one stock in Japan in 2024? And it's from Carl Menger. Japan's hottest stock is a 25-year-old company that just started adopting the Bitcoin MicroStrategy playbook. And they are up 1,361% this year. Just connect the dots. Everybody's doing it. I remember the minute that was announced, I went immediately to Metaplanet. Of course, no options, so I didn't play it. Anyway, same with Semler too. But I have other proxies as well. So that is the crazy little bit of news today. This thing is scarce. The more it goes up, the more it's being adopted, the higher the money flows. And that crunch will happen. I don't know when. I don't know, one more time, what it'll take for some of these long-term holders to start selling more. But I don't think it matters because the amount that's being purchased is insane by the 9 ETFs and by the Michael Saylors every week. Tens of thousands of Bitcoin. And then by all the new players as well that are coming into the play. So it's an exciting place to be. Don't let a little down day take you down. The future's bright. Definitely. Thanks all for coming. Hope you enjoy the Wednesday we have, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye. And thank you as well to the mods in the chat and everybody else. Have a good night.